So if, like I said, the alarm does reset if your battery voltage, cell voltage recovers, and it does beep when it's an alarm. It's very easy to pick out of background noise. Then I did some calculations because I was interested in seeing how much power does this draw. How much will this thing drain the battery versus the quadcopter, which is the i1 Extreme that I'm flying the same thing on. So I did some calculations and some measurements. So basically, the device here, assuming around nominal voltage of 7 volts, feeding this, and it takes 28 milliamps. It's using 200 milliwatts of power on average. When it goes into alarm, it's more. Certainly is more. The sounders do take quite a bit more current than this 28 milliamps. Taking a 2S battery, for example, for the i1, I've got a 2S battery that I'm going to call 7 volts because it's roughly good enough. And the battery is 1150 milliamp hour capacity. And assuming that I'm assuming that the charger charges it to 95% and it drains it to 10%, which I really don't know. So hopefully it's not draining it that far, but that's what I'm going to assume. That's what I assumed in this case. So that's 6.84 watt hours is the energy used when I use this battery pack to fly the quad, not including this. And I drain that battery in 10 minutes roughly, and since energy is power times time, power is energy over time, so the average power of the quad is this power average for 10 minutes, which is 41 watts, which sounds about right. That's expected. Now, 41 watts comparing to the 0.2. 0.2 is obviously a lot lower. Doesn't seem like it's going to be a concern. And basically, this device is going to take 0.5% of the battery energy during the flight. So it's half of 1%, which really is tiny. So that's great. The other thing is when the alarm is on and it is beeping, this draws 4 times as much power. So if the alarm was on the whole time, it should drain the battery about 1% instead of half of 1%. So not a concern. The energy this uses is well worth its function. I'll be taking it out, trying it. Hopefully it should work as expected. If it doesn't, I'll try to come back and add to this video and highlight what surprises there were. I've discovered something that is kind of disturbing about this low voltage alarm, at least on this one. Maybe I have a bad one, but I'll demonstrate for you. This is a balance connector that is in a 6S battery, and so we've got 7 wires, basically 6 voltage taps and the most negative battery terminal. And so I've got the negative here. This would be the 1S, 2S, 3S, 4S. This is only good for up to 4S. And right now everything's plugged in. All the voltages are high enough to give all 4 green lights. The lower light here is the 1S status, 2S status, 3S, 4S cell in the battery. So connected is 4S. If I were to plug this in to the balancing connector, it would look the same. I've just got these jumpers so I can disconnect one at a time, simulating a cell failure, an individual cell failure. So this is kind of interesting. If the 1S, if the first or the lowest voltage cell fails, when I pull this out, disconnect it, what happens? I get the 1S cell alarm, which is great. That's what we want. And if it is restored, it comes back green. Wonderful. So far so good. Now if I disconnect the 2S, the second cell in the pack, the whole thing goes dead. And I think it's because the 2S from the 2S positive to the most negative is about 7 volts, and I think that is what powers this entire board. And so if it's, I think if the second cell gets too low, it may not alarm. Well, at least if it fails. I did do some testing on the voltage which triggers the alarm, and that actually works. But if the entire voltage fails, or if this one wire gets to be loose or disconnected, that alarm, that whole board goes dead. So now if I disconnect the third battery, the third cell, sorry, the 3S, or the third cell in the pack, what happens? Ah, yes, that works just as we hoped. And when the voltage is restored, it does go back out of alarm. But what if I disconnect the fourth cell, the highest voltage cell in the pack? Light goes out, no alarm. That's not very good. I would think you should get an alarm. If I plug it back in, I get all 4 green. So the second cell and the fourth cell don't seem to generate alarms if those cells become disconnected or fail in some way.